Welcome back to the Get Well podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is the show designed to be your bridge to a better future. We discuss solutions in natural health care, functional wellness, health topics that are in the news, and much more. My office is right here behind Women's and Children's in Lafayette, and today I wanted to dive into the subject of digestive health once again. I'm very worried, Acadiana. I'm worried that so many people in South Louisiana have such a destroyed digestive system, and the scariest part is they don't really think much about it. I talk to patients every day that are on 2, 3, sometimes 4 different digestive medicines, and their digestive health is terrible. They're taking something for their reflux and something for their bloating and something for their pain and something to help them use the bathroom or to stop them from using the bathroom. And they're not absorbing any nutrients whatsoever. Acadiana, listen. There is no such thing as having a bad digestive system attached to a healthy human. Your digestive system does so much more than we ever thought. It helps make thyroid hormone. It makes serotonin, which is the antidepressant and anxiety neurotransmitter for your brain and mood health. It helps make energy so you don't have brain fog and fatigue. People just don't take this serious enough. If you have digestive problems, you should be concerned because there are larger things at play. And I've consulted patients, which, by the way, I've consulted over 10,000 patients. In May, I will mark my 25th year in private practice. And when I'm discussing these problems with the patient, they just don't know what to do. They feel like they've tried everything and nothing has worked. Their medicine is barely working. It's unreliable. And they just decided to live their lives this way. And for these patients, I get what it's like. I get what it's like to be able to afraid to go to a festival or to even just the grocery store. I get that you just want to be normal and be able to eat our great Cajun food without suffering all the bloating and pain involved with IBS or Crohn's. Most people just feel frustrated that no one's been able to figure out why they're having these problems in the first place. You know, I had a patient about a year ago who just stopped dating. She hadn't been on a date in over a year. Why? Because when you go on a date, what do? You go out to dinner. And her IBS was to the point where she wasn't even able to finish the date. So she just quit trying. She had been alone for over a year without a single date. And I'm happy to report that we did our 4-step process for her, and she's not only dating again, but last I heard, she's now engaged. So I've developed a 4-step process that uncovers the underlying reasons why the digestive system is a wreck in the first place. And no one else is doing this kind of work, but it's critically important. Look, in IBS, the I stands for irritable. So shouldn't someone at some point do some testing to see if we can find out what is irritating the bowel and irritable bowel syndrome? I mean, if you had a pebble in your shoe that was irritating your foot, I could numb your foot so that you didn't feel it, but the irritation is still there. So when the numbness wears off, it's coming right back. Or we could find out what is actually irritating your foot and remove that from your shoe permanently. And that's exactly what my 4-step process does. So there are really 4 main aspects that covers the vast majority of the digestive problems out there. IBS, Crohn's, UC, GERD, diverticulitis. And one of the main secrets begins with the realization that your entire digestive tract is all connected. And that sounds kind of silly to put it that way, but what I mean is people don't realize that digestion starts with your saliva. Your saliva is supposed to do a certain job, and then it's passed off to your stomach, where your stomach acid is supposed to do a certain job. It's supposed to do something with that food, so then when it's passed into the small intestine, it's in a certain condition, and that has a job to do, and then it gets passed on to the large intestine. And each one of these points, each one of these steps has a very important job to do. You can't isolate the stomach problem as the stomach. And that's a very Western medicine, traditional doctor American healthcare way of thinking. What's the symptom in the stomach? Take this to cover up that symptom in the stomach. But my point here is that we have to begin to look at the entire digestive system as one system. And if we're ever going to get in the ballpark of solving digestive health for good, we have to have a system in place that looks at your digestive system as one complete package. So the number one key here is don't ignore the other areas. What is the saliva doing? Is there enough of it? How quickly is the patient eating? Which I'm terrible at, by the way. I'm just so type A that I'm in a hurry. Everything that I do, I scarf my food like I'm in basic training or something for the military, and I'm trying to get better at that. But we have to know what the saliva is doing, and then we have to know what the stomach is doing, what the balance of the stomach acid is. Many patients don't have enough stomach acid to digest their food properly. And yes, I said most patients have low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. The reflux that they feel is their undigested food rotting and bubbling up into their esophagus. It's not overactive stomach pumps in your stomach very often. It's actually underactive. And I know that's not what we've all been taught for 40 years, but it's the truth. Most folks have low stomach acid, and then their undigested food does not have a high enough acid content when it goes into the small intestine. And then patients can develop something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That means that their stomach acid was so low that they now have bacterial overgrowth in their small intestine, which is not supposed to be there. And when those bacteria produce gas, there's nowhere for it to go. It's trapped in the small intestine. And that's where the pain and bloating comes from. And sometimes SIBO is so bad, you can see their stomach swelling. It's really a terrible thing to have. And all of that comes when the stomach acid is too low. And then the functioning of the small intestine has to be looked at for the peristaltic wave that pushes that food into the large intestine. That's the muscular contraction that takes place. Patients are diagnosed with gastroparesis, which means your digestive system's paralyzed. Doesn't tell you why. But that wave, that peristaltic wave, is controlled by your nervous system. So we also have to check that. We have a great nerve test for evaluating the nerve function to your digestive system, which is the cause of most gastroparesis. Your nervous system runs your entire digestive system, and there are two polar opposite sides. There's your stress and emergency nerves and your digestive and calm nerves. And so if you're spending your day in fight or flight, in stress mode, your body will never be able to go into relax and digesting mode. And we have a computerized test called heart rate variability that shows us the severity of, are you stuck in fight or flight, or do you have a normal digestive system? So it could be the bills, the kids, the boss, the spouse. You don't have to be running from a predator or someone breaking into your house to be in fight or flight response. You could be worried about your kid that just went to college, or worried about those extra bills that came in this week. But your digestive system will shut down because it's physiologically the same response. You know the old saying, well, you just have a nervous stomach? Okay, well, shouldn't somebody look at the nervous system that controls the stomach at some point? If we're gonna call it that. So guys, this is the number one secret that we have to look at. The entire digestive tract as a whole. Diverticulitis is not a colon problem. IBS is not just a colon problem. Crohn's disease means that your immune system is attacking the colon. That's not a digestive problem at all. That's an immune system problem. Your colon is being beat up by your immune system. And that's where we should look to see why that's happening. And just because you have reflux does not mean that you have overactive acid pumps. You may have too little stomach acid, leading to your food rotting in your stomach, and that's the reason that you have reflux. Now, the reason the medication works is there's a second medicine in there that pushes that undigested food down your system, creating SIBO and IBS. So all of this overuse of these acid pump inhibitors like Nexium, not a good thing to have. So we have to check the whole system. And I get that you feel frustrated. Some of you may have even given up to just doomed to a life of feeling crappy. Now, probiotics are another thing that people turn to. People are spending hundreds of dollars on these expensive probiotics, and the research on this just no longer backs it up. There is new literature and new research that says that probiotics may actually make you worse over time. And look, you're talking to a guy that's recommended probiotics for 20 years. And here's why we now know that that's the case. The benefit that you get from probiotics is that the probiotic bacteria, when they die, they release a protein. And those proteins somewhat help calm down the digestive tract. But you're not regrowing anything. You're not adding bacteria that are going to go regrow and flourish in your digestive tract like we once thought. So it doesn't matter if you buy the $90 bottle of live ones that say 50 billion live bacteria, or you buy the cheapest one, you will still get those proteins. So you're talking to a guy that's wasted a ton of money on this personally. But if you're not keeping up with the latest literature on what this stuff says, it's not good. Your doctor may still be stuck in the 1990s. It's not 1998 anymore. We now have natural solutions to solve many of these problems without relying on handfuls of expensive probiotics that don't work or stronger and stronger medication. So step number one is to evaluate the whole digestive tract as one system. Digestion starts in the saliva, goes to your stomach acid, then into your small intestine where peristalsis pushes that into your large intestine. And each one of those phases has a critical part of your health and is dependent on the next phase to do its job. Now, step number two is to balance your microbiome. Your microbiome is the ecosystem that you have inside your body. And you have an entire world of bacteria and microorganisms that live inside your colon. Now, guys, there's over 100 different strains of beneficial microorganisms that are supposed to be in your gut. In fact, you have 2 to 5 pounds of bacteria in your body. There's more bacteria cells in your body than there are human cells. And there's hundreds of different strains of these beneficial microorganisms. So probiotics are what, 11 to 14? That will never do it. So taking probiotics by the handfuls when it's only 11 strains and you need hundreds is why that doesn't work. Now, I have a lab to where we can now DNA test each strain of the microorganism that you have in your digestive tract. And here's why this is so important. We need to know if you have harmful families of bacteria or you have healthy families, and we need to know the numbers of each so that we can bring those numbers back into balance. The ratio of healthy ones that you have and the unhealthy ones are important. Now, the old traditional way of looking at this in medical is they would do a culture. So they would take a sample and they would put it on a dish and they would put it in an incubator in a lab and they would grow it for 3 or 4 days. Then they would pull that dish out and see what strains of bacteria grew. And then they would extrapolate, well, that must be what you have in your digestive system. Here's the problem with that. The new research shows that that misses 70% of what's actually there. It's no more than a shot in the dark. And so if I can DNA test these bacteria, and what that means is that they run that through a DNA test to see every single strain that you have. Nothing is missed. all the different genuses and species of each family of bacteria. For example, there's 4 different types of E. coli. There's more, but there's mainly 4. 2 of them are pretty harmless. 2 of them could be fatal. So if you grow this in a lab and go, well, you have E. coli, well, what does that exactly mean? There's one family of bacteria called Vibrio, which literally consumes your healthy bacteria and releases sulfur gas. Now you can imagine what kind of pain and bloating that would cause. Imagine if you had sulfur gas in your small intestine that could not escape. Imagine how painful that would be. So guys, this is kind of complicated whenever it comes to figuring out all of the details of your microbiome. You can't figure all of this stuff out in 5 minutes. That's why we don't do 5-minute office visits. Well, guys, that's 2 of the 4 major steps to solving complicated digestive problems. And I'm going to have to cover the other 2 in a later show because I'm out of time today, because I went on a ton of different tangents today and got off on some sidetracks, but that's okay. It's all very important information. I want you guys to know that this is my passion. I talk to too many people that are going through life unhappy and feeling crappy because nobody's sit down with them and figured this out. So if you're interested in knowing more, you can call my office at 983-CARE and we can set up a time we can sit down knee to knee and talk about this. The number to call me again was 983-CARE. I'm Dr. Kevin, so we'll see you same time, same place next time. Love you, Acadiana.